present some basic information, and then hopefully we can have a discussion. So this is a member-to-member organizing training. It's not an official W2 training. They want to make sure I'm saying that. And it's just meant as members who we've been stepping up and taking action in our own personal capacities and just sharing some potential best practices. Many of us have taken organizing trainings over the years or gotten involved in other actions. So we just want to share what we know as members with each other, as well as hopefully hear from anyone who's in this room, on any best practices, questions, concerns that you might have as you may have participated in, actions in your building and throughout your career. Today's mini training is about hosting meetings, in this case on the Memorandum Agreement and the Direct Action Campaign. So I think a lot of us are getting a little tired. And so, there's kind of this thing like, another meeting, really? Like, that's what we're doing? We're going to just keep meeting and meeting? But the fact is that meetings are the bread and butter of organizing. They help build relationships and show solidarity. They help our members see that they're not alone. Meetings, if they're done right, should be a form of two-way communication. So it shouldn't just be a living newsletter or someone's just sharing and being a sage on the stage and like basically reading what could have been in an email. These really should be a place where work can get done. And also to make sure, to hear everyone's voice and try to find a way to find that common ground and get on the same page. Ideally, meetings should have a clear purpose and agenda, give members a chance to decide on something, give information, but also seek information to hopefully share more broadly with the union, and plan a course of action and next steps. This is a possible agenda that could be used, but you can always modify it to suit your needs if this is the first meeting that your group would be having or your school would be having on kind of the campaign and reopening. So one thing to do is introductions, especially if you have new members and you can invite them. You should be taking attendance. So who is present, basically who's getting the information, who's a part of this, and who might need to be followed up with because they're not there. Because the goal is to get our whole buildings on the same page and in this fight about reopening. And so if someone's not there, that's fine, but then somebody hopefully should be tasked with reaching out and following up with them, ideally using a phone tree, which we'll talk about at a different training. So what are we fighting for could be the next part of your agenda. Kind of just, this is like the brief introductions. I've included slides for this in this presentation, which I'll share with everyone, and can be modified to suit your building's needs. But basically, that we're doing distance learning only, no matter what DCPS says, and we're not going to come back in until we have been properly negotiated with and treated as an equal partner by DCPS. And the tool that we're using to achieve that is what we call a memorandum of agreement. So that we can then, whatever we achieve is in writing in the form of a contract. We also then have a petition, and that we'll talk about a little bit just as a way to get people to put their name to it, which can be scary for some of our members, right? Putting their name on something that is a little defiant in a sense, right? Because we're saying we're going to do distance learning only until DCPS negotiates an MOA with us, in good faith. And part of what you can use this meeting for is to ask, have you seen it? Have you seen the petition? Have you signed it? And then marking down on the list of members that you or your building rep has who says they've seen it and signed it. And then if there's concerns or any other things, this is the chance to discuss those concerns and try to see, if we can get all of our members to agree to sign it. But it's important that we hear what concerns our members have, because we do need to address them as a union. And so it's not about, berating anyone or being like, oh, your concern is silly. It's about bringing people in, understanding where they're coming from. And if there is something big and a lot of people have it in common, definitely sharing it with the union And there's different ways to do that, which I'll mention in a little bit. The next thing would be to, hopefully the bulk of the meeting or the rest of it would be to plan next steps. If a low percentage of people have signed the petition, then maybe make a plan to get more signatures. Who in the building hasn't signed it yet? Who can reach out to them and talk to them and see, if it's just they haven't seen it or they have concerns, and what are those concerns, and see if we can address those concerns so that they will sign it. If the petition seems good and almost everyone's seen it and signed it, then maybe brainstorming bigger picture. How can we get parent and community support? Do we have any concerns about our administration, and do we need to do anything to preempt it? Can you get your members to attend an escalating action or participate in the broader citywide campaign around reopening? Or even plan and take an action of your own if your building wants to, step up and do something. Are there any thoughts on the agenda?
Laura, I have a question for you. We're limited in terms of what we can do other than say we won't come in. We're not allowed to go on strike. It's illegal, right?
It would cause a fine to the union, which we've made in the past.
So what exactly, when you're speaking about action, are we talking about work to the letter of the to the letter of the contract? That kind of a thing?
I think in the immediate, like summertime,
well, I mean,
we're talking about like direct actions to try to pressure the mayor and the council to not have us go back in person. If you're correct, if that fails, then I do think, we always need to be planning more actions. And so that could be something that we could consider. I think right now organizing committee is very focused on the summer and like pre-return, but yes, post-return, post-school starting, we certainly are going to probably need to, switch strategies and have, different forms of collective action.
Well, the only thing I want to add here is that there was concern about PPE, and one of the things they touted was this one school got 4,000 masks. Okay, my school will need roughly, if we have 580 kids, which is big for us, we would need masks for them and the staff, which will total, say, 60, right? So we're talking about 640 masks a day. So 4,000 masks means we have enough for a week. So,
like, and right now, right, sharing like stories like that and thinking of ways to get our voices and our concerns out more broadly is, I think, kind of where we're at. And certainly pushing back against DCPS's narrative that they're somehow prepared, because we know for a fact that they're not. So I do think like that's all really important discussions to have and things to strategize around. And that's why we hope that like each building site can be having these regular discussions, because that means more ideas are coming in. And if someone, as I'll share, is kind of tasked with pushing that up the chain of the union, or having someone go to the organizing committee and sharing an awesome idea that the building came up with to get more people to participate in, that we can kind of do this really grassroots action. Because I think if we keep waiting on the WTU to plan and execute actions, it goes too slow, and it's still probably like one at a time, because, we don't have that big staff, all things considered. So as members, like, we're the ones who are on the line anyways. So like if we're planning concerns or messaging or things that we know we need to get out, like the more people participating in that, the better, right? The ideas you're giving are good ones, and not necessarily ones that I've thought of, right? But we need all of those voices, and as many as we can get, planning and executing actions to show that like this isn't just like a few people who are very active, it's all of us together. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Just a couple things on meeting best practices is to host on Zoom and not Teams, since Teams could possibly be monitored by DCPS. We don't know. Probably want to keep our paranoia hat on a little bit. But if you use your DC government email, you can get 100 people in your Zoom room and unlimited time for free. So,
But your Zoom room is connected into Teams, and they can do exactly the same thing. So they can monitor your Zoom exactly the same way as they could on Teams. That's a really, pardon me, not a wise choice. Those of us who have Zoom should simply use Zoom.
that's
It's a terrible. I'm sorry. It's no different. We might as well use Teams if we're going to use Zoom from Teams.
no.
Have
I'm saying
access to that.
use Zoom and not Teams. I'm 100% with you. We use our personal accounts.
But our DC government email allows them into our Zoom meeting. They can get the recordings just the same. You have to have it. It has to have nothing to do with you're going through Teams.
No, I set up my Zoom account personally.
Yes. Does it say? Do you give a DCPS email?
I use my DC government email so that
Yeah. And that makes them. That means that they can get into your Zoom meeting and see the recordings and can see everything just like Teams.
I'll look
Anything?
at that,
Huh?
but I will look into that. But that's my understanding.
This is what I was told by an Apple genius who happens to be my nephew.
Gotcha.
It's not secure. You need to do it on a completely private account.
Okay. Well,
And none of us is going to have 100 people probably anyway. I mean, we're just not going to have it. So even if you had 40 minutes and 20 people,
yep,
you're fine.
So we should start in as close to on time as possible. Ideally, assign someone to take notes, or if you're comfortable taking notes, take notes so that someone can share. Something I like to do is I actually like to take notes in the PowerPoint so everyone can just see them, to make sure I'm capturing what's going on. And that way, then you just kind of can just send out the PowerPoint to people with the new notes in it. But that's of course up to you. Make sure to try and find plenty of spaces for members to have a chance to speak and share, but also part of, I know like we all have trouble with this, myself included, but if we're all on the same page, then we no longer need to keep sharing endless stories that are preaching to the choir. We can share them and keep them short. It's good to have our voices heard. We all do need a chance to vent, and that's important. But if we are on the same page, then we want to try to push forward into the action planning and doing something about it. If the issue is that we're not on the same page, then sharing those stories is very important because it's good to hear from each other to make sure that we're all coming to the same place. But if it does sound like, okay, I think everyone agrees on XYZ things in our building, then, we don't want to cut anyone off, but at the same time, we do want to move forward. So kind of gently trying to push us forward is usually what I find is the way to go. So that we can get to that action planning part, making and assigning next steps, and really doing something with our shared concerns. If we're on the same page, then we need to move to the next stage, which is taking action on it. So this is just the last part for me. So it's kind of thinking about what can I do just as a member. So possibly if you have an active or semi-active building rep, you could contact them and ask them to host a meeting if they haven't already. If you're unsure who your building rep is, you could contact your field rep, possibly an executive board member like me or Steve. We do have access to at least some information about who building reps are at each building. And we're happy to always try to find out if we don't know. If your building does not have a rep, or they don't seem interested, or they're very busy, it is the summer, we understand that. You could potentially offer to lead the meeting, or to invite myself, someone from the Memorandum of Agreement team, possibly a member organizer, to come in and help host, and invite your members to that. If you are an elected building leader, again, you could just offer to host the meeting. If you're the rep, obviously you can just do it. Contact your members, ideally using a phone tree if you have it for a more personal connection. And then, create your agenda, either modifying the one I gave or whatever you need to suit your building. Just kind of make sure your meeting is planned, and you're setting at least some internal times for yourself of like, okay, after 10 minutes, we want to move on to this So again, that you don't get stuck in just the sharing of common concerns, because again, while important and should be included, you want to be able to move on to the actual action planning. Otherwise, it just feels like a great session that got us nowhere. And sometimes people can leave feeling frustrated after that because they feel like we're still kind of stuck on our hamster wheel of doom. So those are really some of my initial thoughts kind of on what can we do. And again, we'll have some more follow-up mini trainings on some of these things, like what if we don't have a list or we don't have a phone tree? How can we build these things and make sure that we have these tools in our tool basket so that we can reach out to our members? So that's kind of what I have. The remaining presentation here is some information on the MOA, and it's probably too long because that's how I tend to be, but then gets to the next steps. That could be modified for your building and shared. So you'll have access to that. So are there thoughts, like questions, comments, best practices that you've done in your building with meetings that have gone really well, or ways that you've gotten good turnout to a meeting, or anything like that that you'd like to share for the good of the group?
I have a question. What does the MOA stand for?
Sure. It's a memoranda of agreement. And I do have that in the slides that could be used to present to the members in your building. It is an addition to the collective bargaining agreement or our contract. And at least according to our lawyers, my understanding is that unlike a memoranda of understanding, this has more teeth. And is really just considered an addition to the contract, temporary addition to the contract. And these slides, which I'm not going to go over, but that can be gone over in the building, have kind of a breakdown of some of the major components of the memorandum of agreement as it stands, as well as a link to the whole thing. The kind of general, like our position of distance learning only. We do have the upcoming opportunities to get involved, which also includes a running list of direct actions being planned by members. Not necessarily all approved by WTU. I think they're all just kind of, again, members stepping up, planning an action and taking it so that we are just being seen. I don't think the WTU is against any of them or anything like that. It's just members stepping up and planning actions.
Has the union ever used the MOA previously?
Yes. We have one right now for our athletic trainers because they kind of have very specific needs, and they had drafted one. I believe there's maybe one other one currently on our contract. But yes, it's something that is a practice that we've done in WTU.
How long has it been in effect?
The MOA?
Yeah.
For the athletic trainers?
No, just in general. Has it been, I mean, at some point it appeared. How long has it been? It's been there 3 months, a year since we signed the contract, which would be roughly a year.
The athletic trainers is since the contract. Yep, they got theirs in the original. But
so,
yeah.
So the MOA that you are, MOA that you're referring to.
Oh.
This, all right, that one. Has that been available since the contract, or
this
was new, or is it a rollover?
Proposed 2 bargaining sessions ago.
So last year.
No, like 2 weeks ago.
Two weeks ago.
Because we drafted, this is about
okay, I understand what you're saying.
About COVID. So we had our reopen report. Our hope was that DCPS would treat, here, this is the timeline. The hope was that DCPS would treat the reopen report as an opportunity for collaboration, right? We kind of knew they wouldn't. They didn't. So we then began drafting our own memoranda of agreement to present to DCPS as part of contract negotiations. DCPS, to my understanding, has agreed that this will take precedent over our current contract for the next few contract negotiation sessions, and this is what will be negotiated. I am not present in those negotiations, so I can't speak to how it's being talked about, but I can show you. The draft was created by members. Our field reps kind of created the outline, and then members created the rest. So that's kind of our yes.
Where can we get it to see it?
Here. Link there, and again, I'll drop the link to this presentation in the chat, but I'll also share it, more widely for people who want to use it. Again, it's completely optional. This is just something that we created to help get the ball rolling on any building meetings about this topic. Feel free to edit it, etc. And yeah, I've included the link to the proposed draft. I do want to be clear on that. This kind of process is a negotiation. So I'm hoping that the W2 will take a hard line with that and treat, anything that has to do with our health is not negotiable. But I can't promise that the language in this proposal will be the exact language that would be decided on, but it is what members drafted and presented to DCPS. So this has been presented to DCPS in a contract negotiation session. Are there any other questions, comments, other ideas for how to kind of get these discussions going in buildings?
I don't know. My only comment is that I mean, what we're asking for or requesting has been done throughout many states already. So it's not like we're trying to start something brand new. We're just kind of following what other states or what other districts have done. So it's not like we're setting a precedent. The precedence has already been set. So really, it really shouldn't be that difficult. It should be like common sense for them to see the logic and what we're asking. We didn't reinvent the wheel. We're just asking it to be extended to DC public schools, basically.
Right.
I don't understand the big, it's not a big jump. I mean, if you look at states, Michigan, California, they're following these type of protocols, these type of procedures. So I don't know.
Yep. I think it's also, again, just a chance to galvanize our members to start stepping up in our buildings to make sure that we are all together and acting as one unified voice. That's why, at the end of the presentation, there's the upcoming opportunities to learn more. So signing the petition, right? That's just one way for us to show that we as W2 are standing as one, both internally and with our external partners like parents, family, and community members. And then of course, a petition only goes so far. It's kind of what are we willing to do to back up our words, but it is an important first step. So if you're putting your name to it, that is taking a stand. Then, seeing, are there members who are truly galvanized and ready to take additional stands, right? Like Mr. Goldfarb spoke at the State Board of, Education. That's important, right? People stepping up and speaking publicly. We've seen people starting to write op-eds and other things. There's lots of ways we can take action. And organizing at your building to brainstorm and get started is one way to do that, to really spread that grassroots style of like taking ownership, stepping up, doing what we have to do to protect the lives of ourselves, our students, and our families. And so really, hopefully the thing really is the bulk of the meeting, planning for next steps. Like, yes, there's lots of questions, but we know DCPS often doesn't negotiate in good faith. They play really hardball, and the only way for us to increase the likelihood of getting what we want is to show our power in a way we haven't before. WTU, we've largely been kind of a sleepy group of teachers in a lot of ways, right? We allow a contract negotiation to take 6 years. We might blame our own leadership, but I think to some extent, we as members have to take responsibility that DCPS is not afraid of us. We need to make them afraid of us, and we're starting to. I think that the mayor pushing back her decision, which she thought she could make last Thursday, is a sign that we are scaring her, that she realizes this isn't going to be the way it was before. Having 50 people testify to State Board of Education meeting that went till past 11 p.m. because so many members and others stood up to speak their minds, that's showing that things have changed. So we have to continue to build momentum on that. And really, I personally believe that the building site, our schools, is where we can do that, because we know each other, we trust each other, we can build that community, and we can step up and have each other's backs. And then we can tie into the larger unions, push and narrative, but it takes us standing together. And I think the first step is standing together at our buildings. So, this is just kind of some thoughts of like what you could do. So, think about what do you need to do. At Woodson, we're trying to plan like a parent meeting so that we can talk to parents and hear their questions. And hopefully they can see that DCPS does not have any answers, and therefore it is not safe currently to send their children back to school, even though that might be something they really want and need. Because DCPS has not done the basic work that would be required to even consider having some students return in person. So that was kind of our thought, and we're trying to run it through our principal without him maybe realizing what our real goals are of the parent meeting. So that also maybe, and we've also been trying to talk with our principal to make sure that he kind of understands this isn't against him. This is about preparing to do its best for our entire school community, and that right now in person is not safe for our entire school community, himself included. And with the CSO president attending our town hall on Sunday, I think that will hopefully, be a message that our principals and assistant principals are also getting, that we're all in this together. And this is about making sure our district does the right thing. And then always at the end, whatever notes, sharing that with your field rep is always useful. Sharing that with the organizing committee could be very useful. Myself or Steve, or just, we have a Google group. You could just send it to the group so people can see what you're doing, and maybe get inspired by that themselves, or, participate in any actions or things that you're doing, or share best practices, or tie you into larger goings on. But kind of the thought. Was this helpful?
Yes. It's depressing, but it's helpful, because I can guarantee you my principal will view anything that we do as being against her, and will get the biggest hammer that she can possibly use to come back down on us. And as far as it makes sense, Mr. P, has anything DCPS really ever done made sense to you? I mean, these are people who are just so out of touch with what's going on in our classrooms that, I mean, they have no idea. Impact is a perfect example of that. It was originally, I don't know how long you've been here, but it was originally like 15 or 16 items long. And I wrote to Ree, and I complained to Ree, and the only time anything changed is when I went to the Washington Post, and everything that I suggested they get rid of, they then got rid of. Because when their stupidity is exposed, they sometimes react in a way we want, but it cost me a lot. We have to understand that not only don't they care about you and me, because we are the sacrificial lambs, they don't really care about the kids, their numbers. You care. the principals care. I really do think they care about the kids, but they also care about their jobs. And we can't assume that DCPS in any shape, form, or fashion is concerned, because I'll tell you what, someone will die. It'll be a teacher, it'll be a kid, it'll be someone, but someone will die if we go back to school right now with what they have planned. I'm the perfect example. I have no kid, I have no spleen, I'm over 60. I have diabetes, I just had surgery. I mean, I go back there, draw a little target on me, say, COVID, kill this guy. We have to understand that our kids, especially those of us who are teaching any kid over 10 years old, one of them is going to die, and one of them is too many. It's just not worth it. And we have to make this about life and death.
And I think, kind of like you said, right? A lot of us have been taking individual actions, like you, like me, like so many others. And that makes us targets. And if we stand together, can they really target all of us? And can they really? So, the hope is that if we can get our buildings together, we can try to message as much as we can to our principals. This isn't about them. This is about DCPS and the mayor, and making sure that we're doing right by our entire school building, all the staff in it, all the unions in it, including theirs, and our students' families, and everyone that we return to, that we're taking a stand for all of them, and we hope they'll stand with us, but we're going to speak for everyone. But that really this works best the more united our buildings are, and the more we are doing things collectively, so that they can't just target one person, be like, oh, you keep doing this, now I'm mad, and making it personal. Be like, nope, this is our building, saying this is what's best, and we're going to fight for it. I'm gonna stop the recording.